Today I want to show you how to make this cute little charm bracelet with the Nature's Bounty treasure box number 2. And also, this is a basic technique, so you can make this with any of the charms and beads you have in your own stash. So if you did not get a box, you can still watch the video and follow along. Just use some of the things you have in your own stash. I also have put one on because I made 2, so I'll show you what it looks like on the wrist. And it's really cute. I'm trying to arrange my little charms because I messed them all up. There, and that's what it looks like. And of course, when you move around, they'll move around with you. And this is what the clasping looks like this. It's really comfortable. I like the movement. I like the sound of a charm bracelet. And when your hand is down, it hangs nice and down like this. It's really, really cute. So let's go ahead and look and see what it takes to make this bracelet. Okay, for this project, I'm going to use soft flex medium beading wire. And I have cut about 11 inches of it just to make sure I have plenty. I plan on making about a 7.5 inch bracelet. So that should be more than enough. If you're making a much longer bracelet, then of course add an inch or so more just so that you have enough to work with. Then we're going to be using several things from the treasure box, Nature's Bounty, and we are going to add a couple of things. What we're going to add is you're going to need 4 head pins, and I'm just using stainless steel type head pins. They're pretty strong ones so that they hold the loop that I'm going to make very, very nicely. So you want a head pin that is not really soft. Then you can use the jump rings that are in the box, but I've decided to use a little bit smaller jump ring. This is like a 4 millimeter, 4 millimeter, something like that. I think it's 4 actually, millimeter jump ring. It's a stainless steel and it's nice, strong, heavy gauge, probably 20 gauge, I would say. And you can use, like I said, what's in the treasure box, but this is what I'm going to be using, and you'll need about 22 of them. And then I'm also going to use a little bit bigger, about a 6 millimeter round, and just one of those, and that's also stainless steel. Nice heavier gauge so that it holds very well for me. And then I'm going to use a toggle clasp. Now you can use what was in the box. This is just one out of my stash simply because I used up my other ones. And this is basically the same size as what's in the box, or you can of course use whatever clasp you would like. I'm going to use some of the charms that were in the treasure box. So what I have out is I have the pine cone and the 2 acorns, 2 flowers, 2 hearts, and about 4 of the scoop leaves, and 2 of the monstera leaves, and 2 of the long leaves. So you can see that's what I'm going to be using. You can use whatever charms you want. And then the beads, you need about 10 of the 3x4 rondelles. I'm using the sky blue, but you can use the silver or platinum color ones too if you'd like instead. That's fine. Or whatever you have in your own stash. I'm going to be using 2 of the 6 millimeter round opal beads, and then the frosted white, antique white round beads. I'm going to be using 6 of those. And then 10 of the oval beads. Now I made a necklace already with the oval beads, but I still had some left. So I'm using what's left, and 10 of those. You'll need 2 crimp beads. I'm using a size 2 Beadalon crimp tube. That works really well with the medium soft flex. And we'll go ahead and get started. To start this, we're going to put 4 of the frosted antique white color beads onto head pins, and we're going to put the 2 opalite beads onto head pins too. I'm just going to show you how to do one with one of these, and then we'll do the rest off camera. So what we're going to do is just make sure these have kind of big holes in them, so make sure that your head pin does not, or your bead does not fall over the head of your head pin. If it does, you may want to put an 11-0 seed bead or something on there to hold it. So mine is working. So I'm just going to make a loop with this. So I've dropped it down on the head pin, and I'm going to take my flat nose pliers and I'm going to place them just a tiny bit, like a millimeter above the bead right there. And I'm going to bend over the top of the bead. You want to get as close to the bead as you can so you don't have a whole lot of slack on there. Just like that. And then I'm going to hold it over my finger, between my fingers like this, and over my forefinger. And I am going to grab my cutters, my flesh cutters, and right about the width of my finger, I'm going to cut. So about 1/4 of an inch. Whoops, and make it fly. Hold on to those, okay? Don't let them fly in your face. And then at the very end, I'm going to grab between my round nose pliers, about not quite halfway down my pliers, I'm going to start to turn. And then once I've gone as far as my wrist will turn, then I'm just going to reposition my wrist and just continue to roll this into a loop. And once you have your loop, you're going to have to straighten it out because you'll end up bending it funny. So just straighten out your loop a little bit. Let me get you closer. And then you can see that it's a little bit open here. Now these need to be closed tightly. So I'm going to grab the side of my loop and I'm just going to shimmy it over to the neck where it meets and make sure it's closed very, very tightly. So there's no opening. And I'm going to do that with 4 of these beads and 2 of these beads, and then we'll be back. Okay, so this is what you should have now. 4 of these beads on a loop and 2 of these on a loop. Now we're going to prepare our wires. So I'm going to scoot those aside, back out a little bit here, and get your wire. Pick up one of your crimp beads and slide it on your wire. And just hold on to it. And then I want you to grab one of these beads. So you should have 2 left out of your 6, and just slide one on there. And then you're going to grab a jump ring. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put our clasp on a jump ring so that it moves a little bit better. So we're going to do this a little differently. A lot of times you'll just run your wire through, but this time I want a little bit more movement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my one bigger jump ring that I had out in my stuff here, and I'm going to put it on this clasp. And then I'm going to close the jump ring. Make sure that it's closed all the way. You're using a nice heavy jump ring and you don't have any openings in your jump ring whatsoever. Close it nice and tightly. And then we are going to go through the jump ring with the wire. Then we've got our bead and our crimp tube on here. What we're going to do is we're going to go back through the bead and pull that down, and then I'm going to go into my crimp tube. Now I want to make sure I don't have too much extra wire here, so I'm just going to pull this all down and arrange my wires so that they're parallel next to each other. Make sure that your loop has enough movement, and this just makes it a little bit freer moving on the bracelet instead of just going through the wire. Now once you get through this bead and through the crimp bead, then you arrange your wires inside nice and parallel. You can split them apart a little bit so that they stay parallel, just like this. And make sure you have the size loop you want. Then grab your crimping tool, and in the second divot, the one closest to the handle, you're going to center your tube right in that divot and squeeze. And now you can see I have encased both of those wires into the little tubes on either side of that fold that we created in the crimp tube. Now I'm just going to go into the first divot. I'm going to place it sideways, the crimp tube, so you can see that the two little tubes I created are touching the crimp tube, and then I'm going to squeeze. And now I have a nice, tight, attractive crimp. Now I'm just going to cut this extra piece completely down, as close as I can to that crimp tube, just like that. Now I'm going to, because these Monstera, or the scoop leaves, are sideways, what I mean is a lot of your charms, like this one, if you lay it on your bead mat, it's flat. The loop is flat against the bead mat. This one is vertical. So because it's vertical, I can just use this one without any jump rings. So I can just drop this down, and I'm just going to put it over that little crimp tube, and then I can start making my beading. But I'm going to put this aside for now because we need to prepare our charms for the beading. We already have our little extra beads ready, but we do not have our charms. So 2 of these scoop leaves I'm going to leave without any jump rings on. The rest of all the charms, I'm going to take my tiny little jump rings and I'm going to put them on all of my charms. So I'm going to take this little jump ring, this little 4mm round, I'm going to open it up, and then I'm just going to put it on my charms, all of them, the acorn, the pineapple, all of them. Even though some of them have pretty good sized loops on them already, I want a little bit of extra dangle to them, so I'm just going to drop them on. Let me get you close. Get this stuff out of the way. So I've dropped on my little jump ring, and you open them side to side, so you twist them open and then grab a hold of it and twist it closed, making sure it's closed tightly. So if you shimmy it a little bit, you can get a nice tight closure, because we do not want these to fall off the beading wire as we string them on. So go ahead and put all of your little jump rings on all of the charms that I showed you in the beginning, except for 2 of your scoop leaves, and 1 of them should already be on your bracelet. So just leave 1 aside and don't put a jump ring on it. All the rest of them, put your jump rings on, and we'll be back. So as you can see, I put all my jump rings on all of my little charms, the little metal charms. Now I've arranged them all with the beads that I have previously looped. You do not have to put jump rings on the loops. We will just put the loop directly on the beading wire. So just jump rings on everything else except for this one last scoop leaf, and I'm not even sure we're going to be able to put that on, but we have one on this crimp tube, so I think we may try to put it on the other side. We'll see if we can actually crimp and do that. We may not be able to. Anyway, this is the order that I've laid mine out in, the way that I'll string them, and I will put some of the rondelles and some of the oval beads in between. If you want to string your charms the same way that I'm doing mine, I will allow you to pause right here, so I'll give you a second so you can look at the order they're in and lay yours out also. So let's give you a second. Okay, that should have been long enough to be able to pause, and then you can lay yours out. Now I'm going to begin stringing mine. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I've got my little scoop leaf on here already, covering my crimp tube. I'm going to grab an oval bead. I'm going to alternate charms and the rondelle and the oval beads. So I'm going to pick up an oval bead first, then my first charm that I've laid out, and I'm going to string it through the jump ring I put on it. Make sure you don't go through the loop that's on the actual charm, go through the jump ring, and then we're going to put a charm, then a rondelle, then a charm, then an oval bead, and that's how that's going to work. So I have put my oval bead, my charm, my rondelle, and then my next one is going to be this bead, and I'm putting it directly through the loop that I made, and that should be fine. Just make sure your loops are closed tightly. And then I'll pick up an oval bead. And then I'll start again with my series of charms. So I want this next charm, I'll drop it down. Then I'll pick up a rondelle, drop it down. Then I'll pick up my next charm, which is the bead. Make sure my jump rings lay on there correctly. And then I'm just going to drop this bead directly on here. It's like that. And I'm going to continue doing this. When we get to the center, it'll get a little bit different. So now I need an oval bead. So we'll go all the way to the center, and then you can do the other half on your own. And then I am going to drop down my next charm. Then this one. Then this one. Then an oval bead. Then a monstera leaf. And a rondelle. And then my little acorn. And an oval. Now this is where it's going to be a little bit different. Now we put these scoop leaves on jump rings so that they will hang sideways now instead of scooped up like this one is laying. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drop down the scoop leaf. Now I want mine to face towards my pine cone because my pine cone is going to be next. So I'm dropping it down to where when it stands up, the scoop will be towards the end of my wire here. And then I'm going to pick up a rondelle. And then I'm going to put my pine cone on with my jump ring that's on it. I'm going to go through the jump ring. It has a big, huge loop, but it dangles better and works better if you have the little jump ring on it. So I'm putting my pine cone on, and then I'm going to put on another of my rondelles. And make sure my scoop leaf is laying correctly. There we go. And then I'm going to grab another scoop leaf, making sure that when I put it on here, when it hangs, the scoop portion will be towards my pine cone. Then just make sure that all your jump rings and everything aren't all weird. And that's how that should look right there. Let's scoot you in a little so you can see it. And it's all loose and weird right now. That's okay. We're not worried about that. Then I am going to go ahead and grab another of my oval beads. Is that correct? Yeah, oval bead. And then we are going to put on the next acorn. And then rondelle. And then just finish out the rest of the line of your charms, and we'll be back. Make sure to put a charm on either side of the rondelles and then one of your oval beads. Okay, so I have finished my stringing up all my charms and my beads on loops, and I've ended with an oval bead. Now, I've used 10 ovals in between all of these beads here. If you have a little bit bigger wrist, you may want to go one more section of charms and rondelle and one more of your oval beads. But this is where I'm going to end here. And the first thing you're going to notice is I changed my clasping. This one just too bulky on the end, too stiff, doesn't move well. I just don't like it. I've tried to use these. I have a bunch of them. I try to use them all the time, and every single time I reject them and take them off my piece. I don't know why I keep trying. So I've put one like the ones that are in the box. So if you still have this one left, then use it. It works a little better. So now what I've done is I've put 2 jump rings on the toggle end here, 2 of the small jump rings. Now I have a big one on this end, you're going to notice, and why am I putting 2 small ones on this end? Well, this is going to give us a little bit of narrowing at the end of the bracelet to allow this end to travel through this end. If you have a wide ending, a wide bead, which we're going to put this on, and you have a wide jump ring, you're not going to be able to pass this end through this end. So we narrow it down with a couple of small jump rings. This is also a way you can get a little bit more length to your bracelet. So if you want to, you can put 3 of these on here too if you need just a tiny bit more length. But you're going to need at least 2. So now what we're going to do is I've ended my bracelet on this oval bead. I've got my crimp bead right here, or my crimp tube. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to drop it down. Then I'm going to pick up my last of my 6 etched beads and I'm going to pop it on there just like that. And then I'm going to grab my end and I'm going to go through the second jump ring here, and make sure your jump rings are nice heavy gauge jump rings and they are closed very tightly. Go through that jump ring and then go through the bead, and I've decided not to try to put the scoop leaf on because I just don't see I'm going to be able to crimp if I do. So we have 1 scoop leaf left over. And then I'm going to go through this bead here, and so I've taken my end, going through the bead, I'm going to go through the crimp tube, and I'm going to go through this oval bead right here, just like this. You can see this. I'm going to get you a little closer. And now my wire is coming out right here. I'm going to grab the end that does not slide so that my beads will stay together. I get close to my bead, grab on the stable end, and then slide the other end with the long piece, just pulling on it. Then when you get to the point to where you can just grab onto the beads a little bit and still not separate them, you can then navigate the size of your loop that's going around your jump ring. So you want some movement, you don't want it to be huge, you don't want it to trap the jump ring tight down either. So just look at the other side too, and you can kind of gauge the size of your loop, and there you have it. Now, you can't really look too closely at where your wires are inside this. So you're just going to have to hope that they're parallel the best you can get them, and then you're going to go in between these 2 beads. Now, if you have a smaller crimping tool, that's great. If you have a regular size one, your beads are going to move a little bit. But I know they have tools like this one too that is a little skinnier, but because not everyone has this, and you can see it has different crimping areas here. So you can have a bigger crimp here and here, and then a smaller crimp area here and here. I'm just going to use my regular crimping tool since that's what most everyone has, and I'm going to go between these 2 beads. I'm going to center that bead the best I can, pull on my wire just to make sure that I didn't move my beads apart too much, and I'm going to squeeze. And now you can see I have crimped or folded that in half. Now I'm going to go into the area again, and this bead likes to turn because you can't hold it steady. So just get it the best you can and crimp it together in that first divot on your crimping tool again. And then just to make sure you actually got it, get your straight nose pliers and just squeeze that again. Now this bead has a big hole and it wants to fall over it, which I guess that's okay. It'll be all right. And then I'm going to cut this off and make sure my crimp is good, everything's good. And what I was doing was just tightening it, making sure my crimp was tight by squeezing it again with this. But don't distort it, just squeeze it carefully. And then we back off and you can see what we've got. Now doing the clasping this way makes it a little prettier because you have the bead up here that kind of takes up the extra space where the crimp tube would normally be. And then you have a nice little chain look with your jump rings. And you have better movement. It just moves better. The only bad part about this is jump rings can open, so you want to make sure you have a nice heavy jump ring. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on my wrist and let you see what it looks like. And there it is. And of course, as you move, they'll jiggle around, or when you have your hand down, they'll be down like this. But this is what it looks like. This is what the clasping looks like. It's comfortable, fits well, just about right. And I like the movement of the charms, so I think it turned out really cute. Anyway, that's what that looks like, and I hope you enjoyed it.